There are so many good books out there in the world, and I have by no means read all of them, but I am an English major, and I have read a fair number of books, and this list I'm going to share with you is just a compilation of like my favorites, like the books that you've got to read. So I'm Jess, hello, welcome to my channel, and welcome to my book recommendations. So I've split my recommendations into some interesting categories, and there's like 2 or 3 books in each category, so some really lovely categories that I'm sure you're very interested in. So I'll spare you the long intro and just start giving you a short little synopsis of each book and tell you why I love it so much, and maybe you'll be intrigued enough to go and read it yourself. So starting with the category of captivating memoirs, my first book recommendation is The Glass Castle by Jeannette. And this might be one of my favorite books of all time. I'm probably going to say that about basically every book that I'm sharing with you today because I love them, that's why I want to tell you guys. But The Glass Castle is honestly a very good book. Jeannette is a beautiful writer and uses a ton of imagery. So it's from Jeannette's perspective obviously because it's a memoir. And it starts with like her first memory and then flashes back and forth from her growing up to her when she's like 30 or 40 living in New York. So she grows up throughout the Southwest with her family and they're always on the run. Her father always makes up like conspiracies about people chasing them, and her mom just always acts like nothing is wrong. You're gonna be reading it and sometimes you're just gonna be frustrated that the wrong decision is being made, and you're gonna feel so much for Jeannette and her siblings, and you're gonna be rooting for them the whole time. But I just really like the imagery in this book, so I highly recommend this book. You're really gonna enjoy it, I promise you that. And then the second captivating memoir that I have to share with you is called Educated, and that's by Tara Westover, and this one is intense. It makes you sympathize, just like The Glass Castle, with the parents but also with the children, and it's again from Tara's perspective, and it talks about how she was raised Mormon, sort of isolated from the rest of the world. And again, the father in this story makes up conspiracies about how the world is out to get them, and he doesn't really want his kids like going off to college or like, I don't want to say like escaping the world he's made for them, but it's sort of like that. And eventually Tara leaves and has to figure out her way in the real world. It's just really interesting because it's rare to hear about a children's experience being raised in a way that's different from your own, especially in a way that's like controlling, and it really just shows how parents can shape your perspective of the world. And it can be kind of hard to read and heartbreaking at times because you feel for both sides, the parents and the children, and like the struggle between them, but it's really good. And then the third memoir is Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and this one is also a movie. I think other ones are movies too. I think The Glass Castle might be a movie, but I haven't seen it yet. But Wild is about a woman named Cheryl who in her 20s or 30s decides to leave her life behind and go hike the Pacific Crest Trail in California all on her own without having any hiking experience. So it's about her life on the trail, and then it flashes back to the issues she had in her life before she left. It's so interesting, and I love this book because it's so adventurous. It's like a diary of her time on the trail, and it's very interesting. It made me want to go hike the Pacific Crest Trail, but I knew that was a horrible idea. I could never make it, but like maybe I could because she did it. But Wild is a very good book, and it's gonna make you want to go adventure and just give you a different perspective on your own life. So then on to my next category, which I deemed domestic dramas and quick reads. There are 3 books in this category as well, and they are so good. These are such good books. And like I said, quick reads, like you read them and you do not want to put them down. They can be pretty lighthearted and they seem like fictional, but they do have undertones of dark humor and domestic issues within the home and like psychological like mysteries. They're all sort of mysterious. They're very good. So the first one is Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty, and guys, like I don't know how to say most of these authors' names. I'm so sorry. I sound ridiculous when I try to say people's names that I don't know. But I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Big Little Lies because they made it into a TV series, and it's a very good series, but the book is also just amazing. The book is so good. And this book and the next one that I'm going to recommend, which are by the same author actually. The next one is called The Husband's Secret. They both follow like 3 different families or 3 different people's perspectives throughout the book, and then at the end they come together and like tie up really nicely, and you see how they were all intertwined all along. I love books like that because you're just trying to figure it out the whole time, but then they all come together and it makes sense. It is so rewarding when books perfectly wrap up, and these books totally do that. So Big Little Lies centers around an accidental murder that happened at a school function, and it has all the backstory to that in the book. And then The Husband's Secret also revolves around the death of a girl that happened like 20 years ago, and then it all comes back up to the surface in this book. And then one more book in this category is Little Fires Everywhere, and this one is also mysterious, and it's about romance and like mother-daughter relationships. This one is so good, and I think it's very similar to the last 2. So if you read one of these and love it, then you're gonna love the next 2 guaranteed, which is great. That's a great thing about these categories I've created. Like you can read all of these and probably enjoy all of them. And this one has also been adapted into a TV series recently, so you can watch that after you read it. On to the next category, suspenseful as hell. These books like make me feel so strange. Like they just create like a pit in my stomach and my heart like races, but you want to read them because you want to know what happens. So the first one is called Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, and it's sort of science fiction-y. It sort of involves like different dimensions and different versions of the main character being created and like coming back trying to steal his life. It's very interesting and very creepy and very stressful. And then The Glitch by Elisabeth Cohen, also along these same lines, but it sort of involves more like technology knowing too much about us and then like creating another version of ourselves since it already knows everything about us. These are both very good and you're gonna be questioning the whole time what's going on. Like you're just not gonna know what's happening. So if you want some suspense in your life, something that's psychologically thrilling, these are two great books for you. And then the next category is called Government-Based Mysteries. Such a strange name. I don't know where I came up with that one. But like this is what they are. Like they both involve like the FBI and the president and like things going wrong in the country and like the inner workings of our nation. And the first one is called The Prince of Risk, and it talks about the stock market and the FBI and a terrorist attack that's gonna happen. And it starts with 3 really important people going to tell the president something but they never get there. So then you're like, what were they gonna tell him? Like what was so important that all these people were going to tell him at the same time? Oh, this one's stressful too. And the next one is called Mistress by James Patterson. And this one is about a woman who dies who may or may not have been the president's mistress, but it's from the perspective of one of her friends who thought that he knew her very well, but he learns more and more about his life and is questioning what really happened. Okay, next category, books I read in high school. You might think this sounds like a stupid category, but high school English teachers are very, very smart and they recommend great books. So if you hate like all of my book recommendations, you can go ask your high school English teacher and they will tell you some crazy recommendations that are gonna have a lot of imagery and a lot of stuff to think about. So the first one I have to recommend to you is The Secret Life of Bees, which was based in 1964, and it's a novel about divine female power and a trio of sisters who are beekeepers, and there's a motif of bees throughout. It is a very sweet story and a lot of people love this book. And this one isn't too long, so if you want like a shorter book, this one is pretty thin, so you can finish it pretty quickly. It'd be a great one to read in the summer. And then the next one is Beloved by Toni Morrison, and I love Toni Morrison's writing so much. But it is a book that you can read again and again and always notice something new, and I read it for a high school IB English course. So it does take a lot of thinking, there's a lot of symbolism, but you'll be hanging on to every word and wondering what it symbolizes. So this book I think starts in 1865, and it follows the story of a woman named Setha who used to be enslaved, and a mysterious woman who no one really knows who she is ends up showing up, and Setha believes her to be her daughter. It talks a lot about loss and grief and mother-daughter relationships and the psychological effects of slavery. It is such a good book, and it just makes me cry when I read it. And I know you might be like, I don't want to cry when I'm reading, but oh, it's very good. You should read it. I cry in lots of these books, I just haven't told you that before. And I cry in some of the next ones also, so. The next category is female more spies. Okay, so the first book is The Nightingale by Kristin, which is an amazing book. It follows the perspective of 2 different people who are sisters in World War II, and one is staying at home with her daughter, and then the other sister ends up being a spy for the resistance. It is such a good book, and it will make you cry. But it talks about World War II in France and all of the rationing, and all the people who worked to end the war. Actually, I think there might be another thread in there that's like in the future as well. So it's like 2 perspectives from 1945, and then one like 30 years later, I think. And then the next book about female war spies is called The Alice Network, and this one is set in World War I, and it again follows 2 different perspectives. And I love books that follow different perspectives and then tie together in the end. I think that is just so cool, and I wish I could write a book like that. And this one can be tough to read at times. It's sort of creepy. It's really sad what happens to some of the spies that get caught, but it's really good. But I think The Alice Network is a more mature version of The Nightingale. So maybe start with reading The Nightingale, and if you can handle that, read The Alice Network. And then the next 2 books are in my soul searching category, and these 2 books are by Paulo Coelho, but the first one is called The Alchemist. This is just such a classic book that people read and try to find meaning. It means something different to each person. It's about finding your purpose in life, and like I said in the category title, soul searching. But it's a very simple read, but you have to look for the meaning in it yourself. And then the other one is called Manuscripts Found in Accra, and this one sort of goes through categories, talking about love and the meaning of life, and it's basically just 2 or 3 pages on each category about what these things mean. It's very interesting. It really makes you think. I think my favorite one was about love. This one's just a very hopeful story. It's not really even a story, it's just like a list of things and then descriptions of them, which sounds stupid, but it's beautiful. It's very philosophical. I think you'd enjoy it if you gave it a chance. And then the last category is my childhood, and I have so many books I could talk about. I read all the time when I was little. So of course people love like Harry Potter and the Hunger Games. You've probably heard of those and maybe read them already. But one more book series that I absolutely loved was the Percy Jackson books. And this is about Greek gods and goddesses and their children fighting monsters. It might not sound good, but it really is. The same thing with the Artemis Fowl series, which is about like a child genius and fairies exist in this, but not like your typical fairies, like evil fairies and really smart fairies. It sounds so dumb, but it is so good, and Artemis is trying to like capture a fairy. You need to give it a chance, trust me. But something that I love about both of these book series is that there's tons of books in them, like over 5, maybe over 10. So if you like the first one, you can just keep reading. It'll keep you entertained for a long time. So that about covers it for my book recommendations, at least for part 1. I do like more books than this. I can give you more recommendations if you'd like. But I thought that this was a really good start to all of my favorite books, just sharing them with people who might be interested in trying some new books and reading some really good ones. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, that'd be amazing and it would totally make my day. And I'll see you guys in my next video.